since I started school, I went to a predominantly male school, upstate in New York. It was about a population like 20% women. So I think because I've focused my career on IT, I've only had the experience of women in IT, not women in science, women in math, you name it. So I think I've seen a change this for the past decade, maybe I want to say, where the awareness and the representation of women in IT has increased. And I think that's a major factor that can affect positively the inclusion of women in IT. I think that though we've made progress, it's been, in my opinion, slow progress. I was actually looking at data last night and just kind of comparing the percentage from when I graduated school in 2006 to like 2020. And the percentages of women in IT kind of stayed the same, around the 25% in the US. So while we don't see that increase in inclusion in numbers, I think I've seen it, and I see the exposure that having different organizations that cater to women in STEM, girls who code, who we work with, and how they contribute to the awareness that we get in the field has changed how girls or women look at how they can be involved, right, and be part of the field.
So I'll take it back a little bit. So, I'm in human resources. I'm not in information technology or have an IT related job. So going back early in my professional career, I didn't realize this until this question came up that I actually did work in IT. So 20 plus years ago, I worked in a call center and I had applied for a new role that came up, reporting coordinator. Had no idea what it was, but I knew it was part of the IT team. And back then our IT team was mostly help desk and a few systems people. And so I applied for the position, got it, had no data analytics experience, didn't even have a college degree. Primary role was in customer service in a call center. And so I got the job, learned so much. It actually sparked my interest for data, which I still have today. But when I think about that role, the team was 10 to 15 people, only 2 of us were women. And so that was 20 years ago, actually 20 plus years ago. And then fast forward today and my role in human resources within this organization, if you look at the numbers, we're at 36%. And so when you were talking about, the across the industry, it's 25, and depending on who you look at, it's between 25 and 30%, but ET's at 36%. So we're actually leading when it comes to industry standards. Of course, we still have ways to go, but I think we're doing really well to make sure that we do our part to include women in this organization. And I think that's really important. And if I look back like the last 5 years, even 5 years ago, we were at 33.5%. Yeah, it's only like a couple percentage point change. But if we keep moving that mark every year, before we know it, we might be at 50%. And how awesome would that be?
Yeah, I agree. I think that when I was looking at numbers, I then broke it down a little bit more. You have women, and then within women, you have minorities. And, I am Hispanic, so I was like interested in looking at the numbers for Hispanic women. And from when I graduated to now, the percentage has changed from 1% to 3%. And if you think about it nationally, that's a big change, right? I know it's over the span of a decade, 15 years, you name it, but it's still progress, right? Wouldn't we all want the progress to be faster? Of course, but I agree with you.
Yeah. And I think I have some ideas of how I might tackle this in my role, but in your role as someone who actually can hire individuals, what are you doing to advance, bringing more women into the organization?
So I just so happened to do something related to this effort not too long ago with one of my newer hires. So I had a position, and it could be a junior position or a senior position. I had the budget for it. And so I interviewed a bunch of people. One of the people that I interviewed was this woman that just had graduated a boot camp, had like zero experience on what we were hiring her for, but she had background on the technologies that we're using. And then I had the other two candidates were also inexperienced in a way, but in different things, right? So collectively, they all match the experience needed for the job. If I changed the position to a junior position, right? So I chose to give the opportunity to, because they were all qualified, I chose to give the opportunity to the woman that now is part of my team. It's hard because how do you make the decision without discriminating one candidate versus another candidate, right? So if they're all equally qualified, you have to pick someone, right? But I think consciously, one of the things that I see as a big factor in the inclusion of women in IT is the systemic barriers that we have entering the workforce in general, right? You get hired and you're an entry-level job and you are required to have 5 years of experience, but you just graduated. So how is that even possible, right? So kind of giving the opportunity to people that maybe don't have that experience and be able to invest in them and train them, right? Particularly women, I think is very important. And that's how I've been trying to tackle it.
Yeah, I think maybe, it's to do our part. We need to find better ways at reaching out to more diverse populations, maybe more women organizations within IT that we could advertise with, that we can make connections with. Having a bigger presence on campus within our student populations, especially if we have student organizations that we could reach out to. I think if we could increase our presence in those areas, it might help. Again, like I said, we've moved the needle a little bit every year. And so we've made a little bit of progress along the way. How do we continue to do that? And how do we continue to reach out to the very small pool of women out there?
I think doing things like this kind of helps just to bring awareness to other women. Like, we are out there, we have leadership roles and technical roles. And I think that's representation matters, right? I know that when I started school and I was entering the field, I'm like, well, I don't see any other women. Like, who can I go have lunch with? Who can understand that maybe this month I'm having family issues, or I have a kid, or you name it, right? So I think that doing stuff like that, like this, to create awareness is very useful in my opinion.